Trey Lance, Sam Darnold competing to be Brock Purdy's backup. What an honor that is. What do you make of this competition?
Honestly, I know it's like being made a big deal, but it's like it kind of was kind of expected something of the sort, because it's like, I mean, first of all, they were always going to sign a quarterback, which I don't know why everyone got up in arms about a guy signing a quarterback. It's like, wow, geez, they signed a quarterback for 2 quarterbacks right now who are currently on the mend. No duh. But in terms of competition, I mean, at least verbally, you have to make it out there. Probably in his head, he still thinks it's Trey, but verbally, that's put it out there. Competition. And
also to get Darnold to sign here, Darnold would ask, would I get any first team reps in the offseason? No. Sign here.
That's why you also put the contract there. I think, first of all, I think the incentives in his contract isn't so much that he's going to beat out Trey or Brock or whoever. It's so much that, like, we don't know if these guys can stay healthy. We have very little faith in Trey, and who knows about Brock. So yes, we need someone who's been up there, familiar. McCaffrey and Wilkes probably convinced them to. Yada yada yada. So that's the point. But yeah, I think at this point you need to dangle something out there in Trey, because what was the difference between his first offseason versus second, right? Is that it was a competition, and all of a sudden his first 5 to 8 to 9 training camp practices that he had his rookie year were so much better than any stretch he had last year. Like,
yeah,
even when I came after the first 10 practices, I'm like, Trey's pretty damn solid. He had flashes, whereas the last year I went, it was like,
well, he was playing against the backup defense his first year and throwing to Trent Sherfield.
Fair,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair. But he also was playing with backup supporting cast.
It's true. Well. That's why I was encouraged. But all of a sudden, when he was going up against Fred Warner and Talanoa, is a whole different story. Yeah,
it's a different story. And D'Amico's probably actually calling like a real defense against him and everything. Like trying.
I mean, no one was open. Like you had Travarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley like clamping up. Like the only one who would get open sometimes was Ayuk, and no one else was open. Debo wasn't out there. Kittle wasn't out there. It was rough. It was rough.
A really rough way to bring him up. That's another point that goes to the feeling of bringing him up, right? But yeah, I think at this point, by putting in competition, it increases the quality of reps. Which, why is that increasing the quality of reps? Doesn't he need more reps, right? Well, yeah, but it's like, even though they're taking away like 10 reps of his first teams, at least the other ones he's going to get, it's a high-pressured way to ideally, in their heads, I would think, is to expedite his ascension, his development, where it's like, we need you to be more crisp on these. You can't take these for granted. It's almost like, don't take these for granted. This is a precious moment. We're going to put Darnold in here, not only so he can get up to speed, but also to light a fire on your behind, and hopefully you get it right. Because, again, really quality reps is all that matters for me with Trey. That's why at this point, the offseason is zilch to me. This is all a standard. The actual games that's coming up, that's going to be the real reps that's going to define him. Until then, he just can't lose it.
The way I look at this, though, is it's a tough situation for Trey. Like, again, with Trey, if you're judging him in practice against quarterbacks with more experience than him, he's not going to look as good. Like, you're going to have the spreadsheet and people like him saying Sam Darnold completed 7% more of his throws today. Like, yeah, man, it's basketball on grass. It's practice. There's no pass rush. Sam has played a lot more football than Trey. This is a competition that Trey could lose. But that doesn't mean that Sam Darnold will be better in games over a long stretch than Trey. Like, the whole thing with Purdy was he showed what he could do in games. The Niners saw him in practice and were intrigued. And they kept him over Nate Sudfeld, who's awful. But it wasn't until he played this long stretch of games, they're like, oh, okay, this guy's a freaking gamer. They don't know what the hell Trey Lance is. We know what Sam Darnold, we've seen him play 50 games in the NFL. He is a head case. He sees ghosts on the field. So instead of trying to rehabilitate that head case, man, just stick with Trey, who you're actually invested in. But no, so now what the Niners have is their starting quarterback's going to get no reps this offseason. He'll have no preparation. And then the 2 backups will have split reps. So no one is actually going to be prepared to start this year. None of the quarterbacks will be fully prepared to start. And so that means the Niners are probably going to get the number 1 seed and start fast. I'm thinking.
I think also the reason why they bring a quarterback competition is because I think the Niners want a side-by-side comparison. Like having a side-by-side comparison where it's like, you're going for a car, you're going for shoes, whatever, like whether you put them on or get a test run, whatever, that matters. And I think the Niners realized that last year when it's like, okay, we're 10 games in, we're 7-3 with Jimmy. The offense is whatever with him. Then all of a sudden Jimmy gets knocked out and then Purdy plays for, the 6 to 7 games he gets. And it's like, we have a side-by-side. One guy gave us an extra 6 points per game and went unbeaten. And it's like, oh my God, this is what it looks like. So I think that's what made Purdy emphasized higher than what he is. Hence why he's penciled as number 1. The same thing why Garoppolo in 2017 was already given that anchor and that extension is because the side-by-side. We had Beathard, we had all these guys. All of a sudden we got Jimmy. This is what it looks like. The side-by-side. We're comparing Jimmy to a true backups. So I think when we all get that little side-by-side, I think that's what Kyle wants with Trey versus Sam Darnold is, where's Trey at in terms of coming back from his injury? Is there any rust? Is there anything he's possibly better at? Let's see what it looks like compared to Sam Darnold. I think that's what he wants to see. Like, let's see how it really, because last year he didn't really have a comparison. What was he to Nate Sudfeld? I'm pretty sure he looked better on almost every rep. So at least with Darnold, it's like, okay, we know someone who started before. Like you said, he should look better he should look better in practice. Right. It's like, okay, we know he's not that great, but Trey, we need you to beat him. You should be able to beat him. He should be able to beat him. I understand it's more advantageous for Sam to look better in practice, but I'm not going to bet against Trey. I think Trey will cook this guy. So I think by that side by side, it's like it's almost like Sam's the floor, and it's like anything better, Trey, we're good. And then from there on, get us to the game. So then show us what you can do if you've gotten better.
Yeah, but I'm just afraid that Kyle's going to watch these guys in practice and think that Darnold's better because of practice, and then get him and start Darnold week 1, and then have to have the grim realization that Sam Darnold still sucks. Oh, it's a real game. Oh, he's still seeing ghosts in the pocket. Oh, he's still a head case. Like, yeah, you probably should have just rolled with Trey Lance. Mm-hmm. That's what I think is going to happen. And it's like, why do you think you can judge these guys in practice? Like, your track record, Kyle, is awful. It's so bad. Why don't you just let it play out? But it's like, for example, I think the Niners don't want to trade Trey Lance because they're afraid. They think he might turn out great. They don't know how, or they can't get him there. But they look at Jalen Hurts and they're like, well, damn, if Jalen Hurts did it, Trey could do it. So maybe he's got to hold on and see if he can be better than Darnold. But there's a difference in how the Eagles handled him with how the Niners handled Lance. Like, when the Eagles decided it was Hurts' turn, they got rid of Wentz and they brought in a backup who was not competing with freaking Hurts. It was Minshew. It's not like they were like, okay, Hurts is our guy, but we're going to keep Wentz, and Hurts and Minshew are competing to be Wentz's backup. Like, no, that's stupid. They didn't do it because it's stupid. And drink, because I mentioned the Eagles. They tend to do things a little bit better than the Niners right now. So I'm just saying, like, they set him up. They set the whole process up for failure. And this is like the latest episode of it. Episode 10, the misdevelopment of Trey Lance. He's competing with Sam Darnold, who's probably going to beat him out.
Yeah, that's fair. Trusting if Kyle's actually going to evaluate it accurately or even fairly or justly or whatever. But I think that's the way we're both looking at it differently. Is like, I don't blame you for distrusting Kyle. I can't say anything about trustworthy, but I'm hoping and putting faith in that. I think Lance will look better than Darnold.
Here's what's going to happen. Darnold's going to get his reps with the first team. He's just going to throw to Kittle every time. Kittle. Kittle's going to come out after practice and be like, man, Sam Darnold's great. He's so good. He really like him. He fits in, and we're going to take him to Cabo. That's what I think is going to happen. He's going to win over the Cabo clique in ways that Trey Lance never, ever can. He's a little bit older. Sam, he's a little bit closer in age to them. They're going to love him. You're going to start hearing George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk rave about Sam Darnold mid preseason. I'm calling it right now. March 29th, Juszczyk and Kittle going to love Sam Darnold. I don't know why. I don't know what it is.
I can't disagree because I definitely could see that.
You know who's going to keep it real though? Brandon Ayuk. He'll keep it real. B.N.O. Harris says, would it be crazy if Lance ends up winning the Niners a Super Bowl comeback player of the year? Life's and ask for a trade. That'd be hilarious. No, I don't think he's. I wonder how. Do you think he's mad at the Niners, or do you think he's thinking, Brock's hurt. They can say what they want. Brock's hurt. My competition is Sam Darnold. I'm going to prove myself right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he's mad. I think he's the same man. I can't see him getting mad. I think he's too much of a I love competition guy, and he's going to own it. He's like, I got this. I think that's his mentality. That's beautiful. He's responded perfectly to everything that the Niners have been treating him.
Sam Darnold. Yeah, I'm happy to do this. Tyler Caressley says, another question I have, Jose and Grant, what happens if the same thing that happened last year when we lost all our quarterbacks happens again this season? What's the offseason next year? That's point is going to be, Kyle, what are you doing? What are you doing? Fire Kyle. At a certain point, like Kyle and John, they can talk about what a great team they've built. But if you can't figure out the quarterback position, you haven't built a contender. You haven't. The quarterback position is everything. So if they're in year 8 and they still have no plan at quarterback and they're flailing, at a certain point, you got to look at them as fool's gold. Fool's gold. Kind of like those teams in the NBA that like are first seeds, but just never win the championship because in the playoffs they're not built for it. You know what I mean? Not every year, but
what's going to happen is those two players, Purdy and Lance, and if Darnold gets injured too, is going to be like, oh, they're injury prone. It's not us. They're injury prone.
Yeah.
Not us.
Well, again, if Jimmy Garoppolo goes and plays 17 games for the Raiders, the Niners look bad. Real bad. Scott Hill says, hey, Grant, Brian Greasy will get the best out of both quarterbacks. Trey will shine. I'm curious, what does Brian Greasy do? Like, he did great with Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy, like, was developed. Like, I feel like Brian Greasy's more, the mentality of being a professional quarterback. Let me help you with the pressures and the stresses of it, which is great. But is he, like, doing mechanics and stuff? I never saw that.